Okay, I'd like to call the closed session meeting of the City Council to order. Roll call.
Mayor Garaventa,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Here.
Councilmember Plummer,
Here.
Councilmember Such,
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here. Well, we see you, Connie. You know she's here. Okay,
here.
so at this point is we have a full quorum, by the way. Public comment is at this point, and the two items that are going to be discussed are the continual threat to public services or facilities, which is basically COVID-19. And then there's another item that's anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on either of those two items?
So if you're on a rotary dial phone, press *9. If you are on a computer or portable device like a phone or an iPad, hit the more button and press the raise your hand function. Raise your hand function on computers is under participants, and on most portable devices, you have to press the more button, and then there's a button to press for raise your hand. Mayor, I don't see anybody.
Okay, so if no one wants to speak on public comment, then we are going to adjourn in closed session. And that is number one is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 2, one case. And item number two is threat to public services or facilities, Government Code Section 54957, consultation with Douglas L. White, City Attorney. Is there any public comment on either of those two items? Last shot at that. Don't see any.
They're both mute. I mean, I don't know if
Well, we had the raise your hand function, so I can unmute everybody real quick, and then we'll see if anybody has any comments.
he says no comment.
Steve says no comment, and the other, I believe, is the county. I don't know if anyone from the county.
Yeah.
They're unmuted, so if they
County,
want
I unmuted you, so I'm gonna mute them again if they don't have any comments.
Okay. Last shot. Then we are going to go ahead and go into closed session. We will reconvene at 5 o'clock for our open session and report anything out that's relevant from the closed session at that time, whether we are finished or whether we have to keep on going or what action was taken. So at this point, we're going to go into closed session, and we'll be back here on this part at 5 o'clock.
And who am I bringing with us, City Administrator?
So for the anticipation of litigation, it's just Chris and I. If we want to do I don't know if we want to do it, the threat to public services, that would be, public facilities, that would be Rochelle, Drew, Chris, and myself.
Why don't we do a larger group, and then we'll do it in reverse order.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I think it's 5 o'clock when we're ready. Everybody ready? Okay, let's go for it. Want to first report out on closed session. Councilmember Plummer moved and Councilmember Such seconded, and the council approved 5-0 to settle the claim of Michael Thompson for $28,500 and authorized the city administrator to formulate the agreement. And with that, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the open session meeting of the council, city council for May 4th. And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I'm going to try doing this a little differently. So, okay, everybody ready?
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the
of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay,
I didn't drop the computer. I can't believe it.
right on. Okay, roll call. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa, excuse me.
Yes, here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins.
Here.
Councilmember Plummer.
Here.
Councilmember Such. She's on mute, but I can hear her saying here. And Councilmember Williams.
Okay, we have a full quorum. Item B is the city clerk's report on the agenda posting.
The agenda was posted Thursday, April 30th at around 12 p.m.
Okay. Item C is approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, corrections, omissions for the agenda? Seeing none from council members, we're going to go ahead and go to item D, which is public comment on non-agenda items. The public may address the council on any item of public interest that is not otherwise on the agenda, that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Is there anybody who would like to speak on public comment? And I'm going to allow, have our attorney, Mr. White, explain again how you can do so.
So if you are on a regular phone, you can press *9 and it will raise your hand so that we know that you would like to speak. If you are on a computer, you can go to and click on the participant button, which will have a raise your hand function at the bottom. Once you press that button, we'll know you want to speak. If you're on a phone or a tablet device, there's usually a button that says more. If you click that, there'll be a raise your hand button that you can press and it will let us know that you want to talk. If anyone has a question, please do that so that we can know that you'd like to speak.
And again, this is for public comment for non-agenda items. We'll be having public comment for the agenda items at the time it comes on the agenda. So is there anyone who'd like to speak on non-agenda items at this time?
Oh, and I should say, Mayor, you can also, people, if they're having trouble accessing it, you can actually use the chat function at the bottom to write a message, which will be sent to me, and then I can read it out for the council.
Okay. Do you see anybody that's raised their hand or anything along those lines, Doug?
I do not, Mayor. I believe there is no public comment.
Okay, then we will move on from the public comment portion and go to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. And there's only one item on the consent calendar, and I'll go ahead and read that. It's approval. I need a little bit of water here. It's approval of disbursements in the amount of $146,687.42 for payroll, inclusive of employee salaries, employer and employee taxes, and retirement contributions, and miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions. So at this point, I'm going to ask if there's any comment, public comment on the consent calendar.
Again, Mayor, if anyone has comments, then raise your hand.
Okay, I have not seen any, we're not seeing anybody, so I'm going to bring it back to the council for a motion or discussion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Plummer and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins to approve the consent calendar. I'm going to further discussion. Seeing none, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Oh no, we have to do recall, roll call. Mary Rose. Mary Jane was our previous clerk, so this is okay. Mary Rose.
Mayor Garaventa,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer,
Yes.
Councilmember Such,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay, the consent calendar passes unanimously. Item F is public hearings. There are none. Item G is unfinished business, and there's only one item, and that item is informational item to discuss Governor Newsom's executive order N-33-20 requiring all citizens to stay at home unless needed to maintain operation of essential critical infrastructures. Staff report.
I will go ahead and lead the discussion, and City Attorney Douglas White, if you want to join me on some of this discussion. Today, the governor announced that the state will be moving into phase 2 of the COVID pandemic reopening, if you will, and that'll be happening on Friday, May 8th. Now, phase 2 does come with restrictions. It's not a general opening of all businesses. The governor outlined how that opening would look. Right now, it would be through retail with curbside, and it will allow for some manufacturing and supply chains to be opened up as well. He did also offer, and I know this has been a discussion through many counties and our local county as well, Tuolumne County has asked for a regional approach to opening up businesses. And the governor did announce that he would be allowing counties to take a regional approach to opening their businesses. So what that means is, although we are doing that soft opening into phase 2 on May 8th, by allowing public health officers to attest to certain health criteria, he would allow on certain case-by-case basis for certain counties to expand what that phase 2, how that would open up additional phase 2 businesses. Again, right now, the governor announced we're going to be doing a phase 2 opening on May 8th. However, that is just a limited amount of businesses on phase 2. He is again allowing for a regional approach for cities to allow them to attest to the California Department of Public Health to allow for a broader opening of phase 2. Now, what is phase 2? We spoke to the county health officer shortly before this meeting. They're getting additional guidelines of what all this opening is going to be. We do know, however, phase 3 is not going to be opening on May 8th. So phase 3 would, of course, be your salons and events and so forth. Phase 2 right now is, again, retail with curbside. However, if allowable under the state guidelines, we would be allowed to expand businesses to allow for businesses to be open with certain social distancing guidelines as stated through our own public health officer. And if Doug, you want to chime in on some additional things on what the governor stated, please feel free.
Yeah, again, the biggest thing is, even if the county wants to be less restrictive, not only do you have to have the public health officer and the Board of Supervisors sign off, it has to be approved by the state before those measures can actually take effect. So that probably means that you're looking at least another week or two in terms of time. Maybe there's not as many counties, so maybe it can happen quicker. But there's going to be a short delay. There'll be a little bit of a delay in between that. That's not Friday, to be very clear. And then I have a question that I'll deal with as well, which is one of the questions that was asked by a member of the public is my Friday comments concerning non-compliant, non-essential businesses not being covered by their liability insurance. We've heard about a lot of restaurants across the state and barbers and hairdressers opening up. To kind of put context into that, because those operations are not currently allowed under the governor's executive order, those businesses are subject to having their state licenses pulled. And the governor explicitly in his press conference today cited the example of pulling several ABC licenses for folks who were operating and who shouldn't. And more importantly, because the business is effectively operating would be not being done in compliance with law, it would tend to likely raises a high risk that it would void their insurance covers that they would get in the event that somebody got sick and they were sued as a result of either their practices or just the fact that they were operating when they weren't supposed to be. So candidly speaking, the liability and risk, particularly for those who are state licensed, of opening up and operating sooner is than they should, is or at least when I say then what's allowed by the governor. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I think that there's a much bigger risk in terms of those things that happen than anything that the city would be thinking about or contemplating doing. So, but I think that this continues to be an extremely fluid situation. I really empathize with everybody because it's very complicated when you hear one thing from the president, another thing from the governor, something different from the county, then something different from the public health officer, and then they're talking to their city. So I mean, that's why the primary goal has and will continue to be education. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you have.
And I just wanted to make it clear that you said that about the licenses, the ABC license and the cosmetology license and all that stuff. Those are state licenses, and that it'd be the state taking action on that, not the city nor the county.
That's correct. So it'd be state, and I think one thing that people have to understand too is it's not like we're going around with the police department or our code enforcement and looking for people who are violating the stay-at-home order. It's done on a complaint basis, and we don't, as it stands right now, we haven't turned in anybody. We've just educated people on the process. So we've not written any fines. It's not our intention to write any fines. It's our intention to educate, and the fines will only be for absolutely last result and after, blatant just kind of disregard. And we don't anticipate writing any. So let me put that on the books. But if they're complaining to us, they are likely, if somebody's complaining to us, they are likely complaining to several other folks. So just because they're likely to complain to us, they're likely to the public health officer, the county, and they're likely to contact the respective license in the State Department. And so I'm gonna mute one person real quick. So so because that happens, it's not like if somebody loses their license, it's not because we've reached out necessarily and it's been a result of that, or we've taken some kind of drastic action against them. But the state is complaint driven as well. Although we do know, and they did say that they do have people out from the Department of Consumer Affairs out looking for people violating the stay-at-home order and using that to rescind licenses. And I did have I'll save that for when we get to public comment. I'll read a public comment we have here. So
Okay. So is there any, is that it for the staff report? Mary Rose, Doug?
I just want to reiterate the fact, the governor said on his conference call today that he has been listening to those jurisdictions that have reached out to him to state that we need a regional approach to opening up. And our county, Tuolumne County, was one of those. So thanks for, Tuolumne County doing what they did. We through the state mechanism, or excuse me, through the city mechanism, we've been talking with our League of Cities on that behalf as well. So this was definitely an effort to make sure that the state looked at us from a regional perspective and not just lumped us in. So thankfully, we are giving that up. We will be given that opportunity.
Okay. So is there any questions for staff from the council or comment before we go to public comment? I'm not seeing anyone from the council speak up, so I will then go ahead and ask for public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the public that wants to speak on this item?
And again, for the public, please press the raise your hand number button. I'm sorry. Or if you are on a phone, you can press *9. Mayor, I would just, as people take time to decide if they want to comment, read a couple of questions / comments that we've received on the.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And you can also, if you are having trouble, you can also just use the chat function and send me your questions, and then we'll read them out loud. So one, is there going to be any fines for the businesses downtown? Are they adhering to maximum capacity, social distancing, employee checks, etc.? If you aren't going to do anything, then who do we contact? And kind of in that same lane, the next question is, to be clear, if a business decides to open, you will not fine them, ? So I'm going to kind of take those two together, if I could, Mayor, and answer them because I think they're kind of related.
Please.
So, no, we're not saying we're not going to fine. We're saying that it is an absolute last resort after lots and lots and lots of education. It's on the books for only the most egregious type situation, but it's a tool in the book that we have reserved if we need to, but it's not something that we would do lightly. And it is something that would only happen after somebody has been warned. Candidly, from a liability standpoint, the city, even if it wanted to, couldn't just ignore these kinds of issues of businesses operating in a non-compliant fashion. So we don't have the luxury of just pretending, like these laws are, don't exist. But I do think that in line with what the governor has said, this is largely based on a social contract and is based off of education first and foremost. So while it's a tool that we have and that we're not saying we would never use, it is something that I don't anticipate ever using because we have a wonderful community in Sonora and people who want their neighbors and themselves to be safe. And through education and understanding, I think that we will get there and it won't be necessary. At least I'm going to choose to be optimistic on this one. I don't know if Mary Rose, if you have anything else you want to add.
Nope, that was said perfectly. Thanks.
Okay. One thing I did want to point out, and again, I kind of want to go over is that the difference between administrative and criminal remedies to egregious, shall we say, violators of the order. This council voted, I guess it's been a month now, that to have a mechanism that was what we call administrative, which is the fines, versus criminal, which is arrest and booking in jail. Nobody, the council nor the police chief or the police department for that matter, I would say, wants to arrest anybody for even in the most egregious manner. We'd rather do the fines. I think there's been a misconception about that the city wants to fine people and the county's not doing it. Our recourse was to go at the fine method rather than making it a criminal thing, and other jurisdictions haven't done that. So that's the only difference. And I don't know if I've explained that very well, but anyone want to, Mary Rose or Doug, is that pretty clear to you all?
Yeah, I mean, we don't plan on hauling, and it will be very clear. There's never going to be a recommendation from, and I'm going to, Mary Rose can correct me if I misspeak for the city administrator, but you're never going to get a recommendation on an issue like that, absent some kind of significant community outbreak that poses an immediate and significant health and safety risk that we ever haul people off to jail. That's just not in the cards. It's not something you want. And I think even our police chief agrees with that. So that's not in the cards. So this just gives us a remedy separate and apart from that for the most egregious type situations, of which, again, wonderful community. It's sometimes you have to put things on the books and they never get used. Some things deserve to collect a little dust, and this is. But if we get in a situation where like in Massachusetts, where they've got a Walmart of like 90 people with an outbreak and no one knowing how much it spread into the community, it may be necessary sometimes to have a tool in your bailiwick to enforce these things. So right now, again, we're choosing a path of extensive education and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any other public comment? Hold on, Colette. We're still in public.
Oh, sorry.
Is there anybody else in public comment that would like to speak on this item? And again, Doug, there's some couple people I think have joined in, so you may want to go over that again.
Yep. So if you'd like to speak, please press *9 if you're on a phone. If you're on a computer or if you are on some kind of tablet, use the raise your hand function or the chat function. Chat function is just kind of at the bottom. If you're using a computer, if you go to your participant screen, raise your hand button is there. If you're on a tablet or phone, if you look for the more button, press it, and then there'll be a raise your hand function in there. And then I have one additional question that came in through the chat line. There. Two. I have a question is, are you going to put out a written statement on this issue and will the recording be available to the public? I believe we're live right now and there's a recording that goes up on the city's website. So, so the recording will be available. I think it goes up the day after the meeting, Mary?
Yes,
Yeah.
the day after the meeting.
Yeah. And then are we going to put out a written statement on the issue? It's not clear at this moment. I mean, I think in part we're going to be waiting for Thursday when the governor said that he was going to release guidelines. I think right now we're talking about more of a policy position of how we've chosen to enforce the stay-at-home order. But candidly, things are changing so quickly. By the time I put something in writing, it is usually outdated.
Well, and I'll just say, City Attorney Doug White, that when the council did approve the April 6th urgency ordinance with the fines associated with that, we did put out a press release at that time. And we also, the police chief and I did appear on a KVML radio program to dissect what the council approved. So that was done at the time in which the council voted for that ordinance on April 6th.
But I do want to make it very clear, we are conducting enforcement. I mean, and we make contact with businesses regularly, and the police chief and the city administrator have a fairly extensive process that we go through, and we're following that process. We're not deviating from it. But again, in line with the state, it's based first and foremost on education, because I think there's a recognition of just how confusing this is.
Okay, do you see any more public comment?
I do not, and there's nothing else in the chat line, Mayor.
Okay, then I will go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council. If any council wants to ask any questions or make a comment. This is an informational item only, so there's no action necessary, just questions and comments. Mr. Plummer. Oh, wait, before you go, Mr. Plummer. Colette, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say something?
But I don't need to anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay, Mr. Plummer?
Okay. Since this is just informational, we can only talk about this, but I had quite wanted to, when we met Friday, move to lower our fines. Persuaded that having some enforcement tool, should we ever start really having an outbreak here in this county, was something that we need to keep available. But as an alternative, it was suggested that the council would choose to review, not just, but more as a matter of course, any fines that would be levied. And I would like to propose that and ask that we look at that where we can vote on it in the near future.
If it's something that we get 3 nodding heads on, that's something that just at an administrative level we can implement and just bring back for a report anytime a fine has been issued and let council know and things of that nature.
So let me understand this. You just anytime a fine is been issued, that you want staff to notify us at a meeting. Is that what you're saying?
And that we will review it for the public. We expect to have probably no fines issued. And I'd like the community to realize that and realize that we're on their side, but make it a matter of policy that we will review all of them, expecting there to be very, very few, if any.
Yep. And I would suggest this is just COVID-19 stuff that we're talking about. This wouldn't be
Correct.
of other situations. Yeah.
Just regarding these rules that are so hard on our community.
So what do you mean by review? That's where I'm kind of not understanding.
Where it's an automatic appeal to us.
So we can approve or deny the fine,
Yes.
I say no, personally.
Well, he's asking for it to be on the agenda. I mean, there has to be three of us to nod heads, I think. Is that,
Right.
No, anybody can put anything on the agenda.
oh, anybody can put,
You're all council members, but probably in the interest of time, if there isn't at least three that view it as being worthwhile, then you might not want to expend your staff time on it. So I would just,
right.
again, I will tell you as your city attorney in concept, if it is, anybody has an appeal right anyways. And so I don't see I don't see this as being from a implementation standpoint, particularly difficult. And again, if there was ever a fine issued, I think we would have such a lengthy list of notes to go along with it. It would take a fairly egregious situation to go first. So,
So is there a monetary function to do an appeal? Does an appeal cost so much money for someone to appeal a fine?
it does,
Do we know?
I believe it does in most jurisdictions. I'd have to go and look at what your code reads. It does in most jurisdictions. I will say that
That's what I thought.
if a member of council appeals it up, it is free. If the member of council appeals it up.
Oh, okay. Then there you are.
Okay, well, I told the council that I would reconsider over the weekend and this is the suggestion of our attorney and something that I think shows our community that fining is not the issue, that safety is the only thing that we want to keep some tools in for people who really end up being a danger at this point.
So what I do think, I'm sorry.
Probably the biggest dangers are the existential businesses that are so crowded you can't get in there and find parking.
So I will say that as staff, I think anytime there was a fine implemented, we would just, as a matter of course, come back and explain that to council. So I feel comfortable saying that we could bring that back to council. It doesn't have to be as an appeal, but we could necessarily do it just as an informational item. And then we can go into whatever detail is appropriate for a public session as opposed to a closed. And we can give you guys the right to decide how you want to deal with it at that point in time. But I don't have any problem just letting you know a fine.
So at the time that the urgency ordinance was adopted, that was the request of Councilmember Plummer to bring back any fines as an informational item at the next meeting. So we are obviously as staff prepared to do that, but I just want to make sure I'm clarifying. Is Councilmember Plummer clarifying that, does he want, before a fine is issued, approval from the council?
He's shaking his head just for the
But
public.
No, but I was thinking, obviously I wasn't clear when I first asked for a sunset of all fines. That was sunset, not and you said that every meeting that would come up that we could discuss whether we would get rid of the fines. And that was the informational but still votable position that I had asked for. I have been persuaded that we need the administrative avenue for potentially very rare cases. But if, for example, there is a fee associated with appealing it to the city council, I think that should be waived for this particular set of fines and difficulties.
Well, if a council member wants to bring it back to well, there's two options we can do, I suppose. One is just to go down that road where there's no waiving, there's a waiving of the fee to appeal a fine. The other option, I believe Mr. White said, was that any council member can ask for an appeal and it would be free. I'm comfortable with that position as well, as long as that is I don't recall seeing that in any ordinance, but if that's true, then I'd be happy with that as well. So, but it's really all up to the rest of us, you know.
Yep.
So where are we going? Council members? Colette?
I just feel like this is already in place. We can already do this. I don't know that we need to change anything. I wouldn't, I don't know what the staff time is, what kind of staff time is involved with an appeal. I just feel like the city is so committed and the council is so committed to not finding except for the most egregious behavior that I just think that the policy and, the ordinance plus just the policy of the council is fine just where it is personally. I don't think it needs to be altered.
I agree.
My 2
I
cents.
agree.
Sounds
Yeah.
sounds like Connie agrees with Colette. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And I think the way this council is that we're really open-minded. This is a really open-minded council. So if somebody had a legitimate concern, say there was a fine somehow in the future, I could see this council absolutely wanting to hear it. So, yeah, I agree with Colette.
Okay. And my biggest concern is kind of going away from our usual course of action, our appeal process that we've already got codified and all that. I think if there's becomes an issue, I think it's going to be reported to the council, and I think the council will deal with it at that time. I don't need. I'm a little hesitant for special rules for special situations that, unless they truly warrant it. And so I think it's all going to fall out in due course. So I'm kind of inclined to agree with the rest of the folks. So I would just say to Mark that I think if we ever get down to that point, I think your concerns are going to be allayed by what, bringing it up and reporting on it and appealing at that time. I don't know if we need a special action. So, Mark?
Thank you for the consideration. I'm just trying to make it clear as possible, and I was hoping that we could do so as a council, that we're on the community side and not their enemy, or at least for the merchants.
Colette? Oh, go ahead.
What people seem to be feeling. The people who contact me anyway.
Okay. Colette?
I do want to thank Mark for just reminding us all that this is a serious thing, and also that he did ask in the beginning that if a fine is if someone is fined, that it comes to the council. And I think I actually agree with Mark that that's important.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank him for that.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this item?
This is a little bit in some of the comments that we got, Mayor. Some of this is just, more, I think, geared towards me, but I think that there's a part of it that at least I'd like to address.
Right.
These health orders that are coming out and that allow certain business activities to resume. It doesn't mean that those activities are necessarily safe. It just means that it just means that there's a lower risk of infection or probability of infection. So I think that as we enter into this kind of odd area of where we've gone to, everybody has to stay at home unless you're going to a doctor or grocery store, which I'm sure everybody's done. the thing is, many people have already been dealing with low risk or medium risk activities. And so we're allowing the resumption of more and more of those. So there is risk. I mean, the COVID-19 hasn't gone away, but the hope is that there's testing and people to trace down who might be infected, so that we can quarantine those people, so that the rest of us can go back to work and try to resume life as normal as we possibly can, knowing that probably for the greater part of this year, it's going to be not normal. But anyway, I wanted to, I just wanted to clarify that there's a difference between, just because a health order comes out, it doesn't mean now all of a sudden it's safe. So there's a difference.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We still have to be diligent with our health concerns. Okay. Is there anything else from the council? Okay, that was an informational item only. And that ends unfinished business. Well, now we're going to new business. There are 2 items. The first item is to authorize the Sonora Fire Department to electronically submit Federal Management Agency, or FEMA, SAFER grant. And Amy, you're going to have to explain what SAFER stands for, letting you know ahead of time. Authorizing the city administrator and/or the fire chief to execute all documents relating to the grant application, and direct the fire chief to return to the city council with the application results and to accept the awards.
And Mr. Mayor, before Amy gets going on her item, I just want to say that this is again an example of a grant that requires match by the city, bringing forth the authorization to even apply for the grant. We want to be doing that now with our grants to ensure that the city council is aware that anytime that the city is applying for grants that require a general fund or any type of city funding match, that we seek authorization first before we apply for those grants. So this grant is that type of grant. And however, this does not have a no supplantation language. As we kind of discussed a couple months back with a police chief grant, this allows us to supplement an already funded position. So what we're going to be talking about, what Amy is going to be talking about, is monies to go towards a position that is already funded, but will help us offset some of those costs going forward. So go ahead, Amy.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, members of the public. Tonight, the recommendation coming before you is to authorize the fire department to electronically submit the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that's FEMA, SAFER grant. And SAFER stands for Safety for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Firefighter Grant. So the federal government has realized over the last several years that staffing has become an issue with the public safety and fire departments in general, trying to recruit and retain the adequate trained staff. The position that we'll be applying for is for the fire engineer position on on C shift, basically, one of our 3 shifts. This position right now is funded in the budget, but by part-time staff. We do not have a fully funded engineer position. We have received a SAFER grant in the past to help assist with the cost and the funding of this position. So the discussion on this is that the fire department is requesting that the city council also authorize the submittal of the application to receive federal grant funding from FEMA for the Safety for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response grant. The grant will provide funding for the staffing to fill the part-time engineer position. It's a 3-year grant. The federal funding will cover 65% the first year, the second year, and then 35% of the funding for the 3rd year. The city would be required as a match of 35% of the cost for the position for the 1st and 2nd year, and then 65% of the cost for the 3rd year. Currently the amount that is budgeted for this position to be filled by part-timers The 35% for this next cycle and the first year of the grant and the second year of the grant would be covered, and actually would be less than what is funded for that position. So it would actually save money for the city. The last year would be about $10,000 over the normal budgeted amount if the budget does not change over the next 3 years. And that additional funding would come out of the fire department Measure I. So the fiscal impact moving forward for the first 2 years, if we did receive this grant, would be at no cost to the city, or I shouldn't say no cost, but it wouldn't be any additional funds more than what is already being spent for that position for part-timers. But it would allow for a full-time position to be filled with all benefits for that position for 3 years. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, is there any questions from the council for Chief New? And I see Colette raising her hand. Go ahead, Colette.
So this grant money will cover benefits as well, not just salary?
Yes, so right now we're filling that third engineer position on C shift with part-time employees that do not receive full benefits. And the grant would allow us to fill the position for 3 years fully funded, and still cost less than what it would be for our part-timers to fill the position that is budgeted right now. It also allows for us to keep our part-timers on for what they're, we do require our part-timers to come in and work 24 hours a month as a minimum, just so they keep their skills up and they have their hands on the equipment for safety reasons and for training requirements through the state. So the cost that's budgeted for this position already, it would be about $10,000 less. That would cover the 35% match and the funds needed to allow our part-timers to do their 24 hours a month.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from council?
Yes, but it's for Mr. Gorski, I think.
Okay, go ahead.
That is, okay, it sounded like the savings are enough that if we are prudent with it, that they will cover, the savings from the first 2 years will cover the extra cost, the additional, our 65%, or at least the difference between what we're paying for the part-timers and the additional cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the 3 years, there is a small net savings to the city, and we get to then have a full-time
Okay.
engineer.
And my question to Mr. Gorski is, do we have adequate amounts in the Measure I Fire Fund to do all this?
We do it. The Measure I Fire Fund is low, but there is enough in there to do this because it is budgeted and there is a net savings over 3 years.
Okay. Any other questions for staff by the council? Then I'm going to go ahead and open it to public comment. Is there anyone in the public like to speak on the side? And we lost Mr. White, haven't we?
Yeah.
Nope, I'm here.
You're here. Okay. All I saw was the logo.
That's true. I'm sorry.
So is since you're the Zoom master,
I am.
you can tell us if anyone is using any of the functions of Zoom to talk to us in public comment. Is there anyone that likes to speak on this item?
So you have one comment from Councilmember Williams real quick.
Uh-huh.
Chris, are we budgeted for the 35, 35, 65 for the next 3 years?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'll just comment that our budget is only a fiscal year budget. So we budget, the council approves 1 year at a time. So those costs would be coming into play every year that the council approves those costs. I will say though, however, those associated costs with the fire engineer are already budgeted for those part-time costs. So I would anticipate that those 35, 35, 65 will be budgeted because we've already accounted for those costs in this year's and previous budgets. But again, the council approves it.
And there is a net savings for the total package over the 3 years.
Okay.
So Mayor, currently there's nobody who's raised their hand, but for anybody who would like to, again, it's *9 if you're on a phone, or the raise your hand function. on your computer or electronic device, or you can use the chat function to write a question.
Okay. Okay, last shot at public comment? Seeing no one, hearing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion.
I think if I might have the floor for a second, that once again, thanking Amy, our chief new, would be in order. She has done persistent and constant work trying to keep funding and positions funded. And thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, still looking for a motion.
I will move to approve the,
Say it again, Connie, so moved?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, so it's been moved by Councilmember Williams and seconded by Councilmember Plummer to go ahead and authorize the Sonora Fire Department to submit the SAFER grant and authorize the city administrator or fire chief to execute all documents and direct the fire chief to return the city council with application results and to accept the awards. So is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Mary Rose.
Mayor Graventa,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Yes.
Councilmember Plummer,
yes,
Councilmember Such,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Great job. Item number 2 in new business is to accept the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget update with recommended changes to the account for the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on city revenues and approve related budget transfers, and that requires a 4/5 vote. I
And-
believe, oh, go ahead, Mary Rose.
I'm gonna try to share my screen here. Myself
Uh-oh.
and Chris Gorski are going to present this budget update. So bear with me as I try to get my screen shared with everybody.
Okay.
Hey Doug, can you ensure that can you enable me to participate, to allow me to screen share?
Believe so.
Okay.
Ooh, you are the host now.
Wow.
She's in charge.
Yes.
Only for a moment, though.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can get this on a slideshow.
There you go.
All right. So again, as we heard from the county a couple weeks ago about the effects that the COVID-19 closure of businesses is having on the county, we wanted to bring forth an update as well as to our revenues, because we are obviously seeing an effect to the citywide revenues. So right now, we're seeing a considerable amount of uncertainty. We are working with our partners in the city and the county and the state to determine what those estimates will be to our citywide revenues. But right now, they are estimates. So that's what we're bringing forth to you today in the way of budget transfers of what we're anticipating the closure of our fiscal year to be come June 30th. Again, it is an estimate because of the uncertainty to citywide revenues. So when we talk about the closure of non-essential businesses, that reduces our sales tax and our transient occupancy tax revenues. And those are our two major revenues that come into the city to be used for your general fund revenues. Also, those have an effect on our Measure I revenues, and your Measure I revenues obviously play into your public safety, which is your police, your fire, and your public works. So all of those, we're looking at reductions to those revenue sources. Again, our initial estimates of reductions to revenue are for your fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So our revenues in anticipation, of course, ending June 30th, 2020. And at this point, I'm going to let Chris walk us through what those estimates look like.
So for the remainder of the year, we're seeing the sales tax revenues certainly have declined because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were tracking much higher. It was actually, we were up nearly 6% on sales tax up through February. And so we now are going to see a decline of 6% for the full year. So it's really from February to June 30th is a 12% decline in sales tax. And for us, that's $160,000 lower for the remainder of the year. Moving on to TOT, we had collected nearly 75% of the budgeted TOT through February, and we're tracking higher than budgeted in February. And so now it basically, TOT, as we all know, is only for essential workers or visitors. And so that really has fallen off a cliff. For the remainder of the year, it's 21% down or $90,000 reduction. But it literally, it's basically 80% less from mid-March through June 30th. But the net effect is a $90,000 reduction in transient occupancy tax. Next slide. And so this slide shows the effects of the revenue being lower. There were also miscellaneous services, which are, it could be parking permits, building permits, all those services, fire services, police services, they're all down. When people have been on lockdown, they're not driving as much, they're not around as much. And so we have seen miscellaneous services for the remainder of the year going to be down $18,000. The one bright spot has been cannabis revenues. We did reduce them earlier in the year, the mid-year report, we reduced cannabis revenues primarily because we didn't have the second dispensary open. But the one dispensary that we do have has been performing quite well during this pandemic and has been exceeding revenue targets. And so we are increasing cannabis revenue income for the city by $20,000. Now we need to, in order to retain a balanced budget, we need now to reduce expenditures by the same amount. So what we've done is all the projects that we had in the 1920 budget that have not been completed, many have not been started, we have removed from the budget. That's a savings of $225,000. And then right now, there are no real projects or very few projects. And so we reduce engineering by $23,000. Again, if anything, if there's something that needs to be done, we can always come back and do a budget adjustment. But this would now get us to a net zero budget through June 30th.
So that by doing those budget adjustments, it allows us not to have to dip into our fund balance to make up for the revenue loss. So fortunately, we were able to reduce expenses in the budget to get us that net zero. Again, not having to dip into our fund balance or what the city calls the informal reserve to make up for that revenue loss. One thing I'd like to point out is, we are through our city partners, through the county, through the state, looking at revenue backfill as we go forward. And as everybody I'm sure is aware of the CARES Act that was passed, a couple weeks past in regards to that $150 billion that was distributed to state and local and tribal governments. But those monies had a population requirement. And currently that population requirement is 500,000 or greater. And the state has not communicated to us on whether or not they intend to allocate any of that CARES funding to smaller cities or smaller counties for that matter. We are on our side putting pressure through Senator Kamala Harris's office. We have again tried to reach out to Congresswoman McClintock's office in regards to HR 6467, which would bring additional funding to your local agencies with those populations below 500,000 that could hopefully provide that backfill for that revenue loss for us due to COVID-19. Again, we have not heard one way or another on how HR 6467 is going to be going through the federal government. You know, we've heard through the president that he is looking for something like that. However, it's still in flux at this moment. So as of right now, we don't have the ability to rely on a backfill to make up for that revenue loss. So going forward, we have to anticipate when we're looking ahead into fiscal year 2021, we need to start planning that the city might not have a revenue backfill. And so when we're still essentially on a phase 2, possibly going through a phase 3, we need to ensure that we are budgeting appropriately to show a revenue decline due to the soft opening of your businesses. There's still going to be a revenue decline. So with that, we're going to be looking ahead, and I'm going to try to get to the next slide here. Looking ahead at future considerations, and future considerations are for what we're looking ahead to that 2021 budget. Right now, Chris and I are working with departments to start gathering departmental appropriations and looking at what we need to do collectively to have a balanced budget. You know, there's a lot of unknowns. We've heard, you know, that potentially we should be looking at least 25% reductions in revenue going into our sales tax amounts for 2021. We're also hearing that we should be looking at 70 to 80% in TOT revenues. Now, obviously, that's all going to be changing whether or not the governor starts you know, reducing some of our restrictions. But again, we're still going to be in phases, so we have to anticipate some revenue loss. And how long will this affect our economy? We don't know quite yet. I think in the fall we'll have a little bit better, or at least the end of summer, we'll have a little bit more, hopefully, up-to-date information on when we think restrictions will be lifted or when we think the economy will actually get back to quote-unquote normal, although we've heard that it won't be normal for quite some time. So again, getting a handle on what we think those revenues will look like. We also have to anticipate additional issues that are going to be coming up in our budget, such as our CalPERS contributions. You know, we are looking at increases to our CalPERS contributions. That's going to be something that the city is going to have to grapple with as we go forward as far as budgeting the next couple of fiscal years. When we talk about bringing forth a budget for 2021, I wanted to kind of go through the budget process of what we're anticipating, Chris and I are anticipating for the council. It's going to be slightly different than your normal process just because of the mass uncertainties that we have, and we want to be as accurate as we can possibly be, although we know it's going to be based on largely a lot of estimates. So normally your budget process is to come forth with a budget in May. However, at this time, we feel that it would be prudent to bring forth a proposed budget on that first meeting in June, which would be June 1st, I believe, Monday, June 1st. And this would be called our proposed budget. So we would ask the council to approve a proposed budget that would give us authority to spend come July 1st. However, we say proposed because we know we're going to have to do some sort of adjustments to that budget depending on where our sales tax numbers come in to close the books on June 30th, and depending on where that last quarter of sales tax revenue lands. We get payments on sales tax revenues in July and August, reflective for this current fiscal year 1920. So those payments come in July and August. So we need to be able to see a little bit of what those sales tax amounts are going to be. So again, we're recommending, or we're going to be bringing forth our proposed budget June 1st, and then bringing back a budget, a final budget for the council to approve the last meeting in August, which is August 17th, I believe. And then that way we can bring any technical adjustments to revenue that we need so that we can have a final budget and we can have a better understanding and a better grip on our budget and what that looks like going into 2021. So again, I'm just saying this out in public so that the public is aware, because the process is going to be a little bit different this year. We're going to be initiating a June 1st proposed budget and bringing back a final budget for the council to approve on August 17th. I will say that this is a normal process in county government. Because county governments rely so heavily on federal and state dollars that they need that fluctuating proposed versus final just to be able to see where the state and feds land. But again, from our circumstance right now, I think it'll behoove us to do the budget in on two different dates. The other thing I want to say is, as much as we're going forward with revenue reductions, there's going to have to be reductions in our expenditures as well. So we're looking at everything right now and working with our departments. We're looking at, your services and supply costs. We're looking at our capital project costs, and we're also looking at personnel costs on how to get those expenses down. So I just want to prepare the council when we bring forth that budget. Everything is going to be on the table at this juncture to ensure that we bring forth a balanced budget. It could also mean dipping into, dipping into our fund balance. Right now, I will say that the city has a healthy fund balance. And I say fund balance because I know the city council refers to it as a reserve. There has been no formal action taken by the council to dedicate those monies as a reserve. So they are categorized as a fund balance at this moment. However, we utilize them in the city perspective, we utilize them as a reserve. When the council refers to them or designates them as a reserve, there are specific circumstances in which those monies can be utilized, but at this juncture, it's a fund balance. So when we bring forth this budget, there is the high probability that we could be dipping into that fund balance to make up a budget deficit, to close our budget deficit to get to that net zero. And that is how we're looking ahead into 2021. And, with anticipation of revenue reductions, and we just wanted to make sure that we gave the council an update. We are asking you to approve the budget adjustments for the fiscal year 1920 budget, which Chris went through with you, to be able to reduce those revenues and expenditures to close out our year, and then just giving you a sneak peek into 2021. And with that, I will answer any questions that you might have. And Doug, I'm gonna try to get back to, well, maybe I'll keep this on the screen if people wanna see this, anything. Anyways, I'm just gonna put this is the adjustment of that second motion that we're asking the council to approve.
Okay. Okay, is there any questions from the council? I see Colette has her hand up. Colette?
Mary Rose, can you tell me, there's $225,000 for capital projects. Can you tell me, do you know what those capital projects are?
I do know what those capital projects are. So, and Chris, please chime in. We had budgeted, I believe, $35,000 in a well project this fiscal year. That project has not been started. When I came in to look at that project, we identified that there's going to be additional requirements probably from the county side for us to be able to get that well project up and going. And so that well project hasn't been started. So those monies right now are available to reduce for that project. The other project is the Stewart Street bathroom project. And I know that is one of the council has talked about that on numerous occasions. We have budgeted, I believe, Chris, was it 200,000 we had budgeted for the Stewart Street bathroom project?
Yes, it was 200,000.
We have utilized a small portion of those project monies. I believe 35,000, and there's a remainder of 165 in that project. Correct, Chris?
Yeah, it's very close.
We have anticipated that there will be no additional costs associated with that project for the remainder of the fiscal year. That's not to say that we're going to stop doing the project. We will definitely be looking at it to rebudget going into next fiscal year. However, as of right now, we don't anticipate any additional costs associated with that project. So we're recommending to, if you will, take that additional one, or take those remaining 165 to be able to reduce that project cost, to be able to make up for the lost revenue. And I believe, what was the last one, Chris? Is that one 165?
There was ADA access for Coffle Park. There was some money set aside for that as well.
Okay,
Those were the projects.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Plummer?
Yep. Okay, I had 3 questions. One, I think I know the answer, but my belief is that capital projects that we're saving money on do not include the Red Church intersection or the Stockton Road projects, because those are entirely funded by Caltrans. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
The second question is, this doesn't apply to us, but if it's possible to erase the penalties for CalPERS through bankruptcy, are other cities that are in much worse condition going to be doing so? And will that further raise CalPERS rates?
There will be cities doing that. Cities and counties will have to do that. This was the mother of all budget smashes, and it's going to happen. For the city of Sonora, we were in very good shape financially when our last administrator left. And there's no risk at this time for the city. We certainly are still hoping for some revenue backfill. But as far as our costs going up for CalPERS or other agencies, I do not believe so.
Would actually be very encouraging. And the third, are we furloughing or otherwise cutting staff costs? And if so, I would like to propose that the city council's pittance be reduced by the same amount that staff is reduced, if that in fact is the case.
So for what is in front of the council as far as approving the budget adjustments for 1920, that does not include anything related to personnel, does not include any furloughing, it does not include any staff reductions. However, going into 2021, that could be potentially looked at. That will be for the council to decide when we go forth and bring forth the proposed budget on June 1st.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other comment from the council? Connie, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, Mark, you've already done. Matt?
No.
Okay. So at this time, then I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the public that'd like to speak on this item? And I'm relying on Doug to,
So Mayor, yeah, if anyone wants, if you're on a phone, press *9. If you're on a computer, press the raise your hand button, which is under participants. And if you're on a other kind of phone or tablet device, hit the more button and hit the raise your hand function over there.
okay, is there
You
any?
have one, you got Hazy B. would like
Okay.
The
to-
Bulldog.
And then Mary Rose, if you click on my name, and then you can hand back the host function when you want to as well.
Okay, hold on. How do I, oh my gosh, how do I even do that? I don't even know.
Just under participants, click on my name, and then there'll be the option to make me host. But while we're doing that, we can go ahead and let Hazy be.
Okay.
Did
so
you get it, Doug?
Says Doug is the host now,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
okay. Jeff or Eddie, are you there?
Yes, I think it shows I'm working.
Yeah, you're there. I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me speak, everybody. I just wanted to quickly say I'm honored to see that I was a little bit positive in your guys' data sheets this month, and awesome to see that. And I was actually just going to propose I'd love to move to recreational during these times. We have had a lot of people that were kind of coming at the beginning of this and now towards the tail end of it that are recreational. And I do think when phase 2 and 3 start to hit here and things start to open up, that recreational might be a good source of income for the city coming up here regarding cannabis. And me personally, I'd also like to possibly move to another property, and the other property might be able to do manufacturing, which might also be a good income for the city as well when it comes to the tax revenue from that. So I just kind of want to throw it out there when you guys do end up getting to the later phases of this. Cannabis may be able to help with some of that if you guys are willing to consider that at that time. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Any questions for Mr. Muzio? Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very
Any other public comment?
I don't see anything, Mayor.
Okay, then if there's no other public comment, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion or motion. Mr. Plummer.
I move to accept FY 2019-2020 budget update with recommended changes to account for effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the city's revenues, approve related budget transfers.
Okay, is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Plummer and seconded by Councilmember Williams to do the budget, accept the budget update and approve the budget transfer. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Mary Rose, can you read the
Mayor Garaventa,
aye?
Mayor Pro Tem Hawkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Plummer,
Yes.
Councilmember Such,
Aye.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0. And where's my agenda? Okay, so that's end of new business. Item I is communications. There are none.
Nope, there's
Is that
one.
correct?
One
Oh,
more.
where am I?
There's one.
So I've got this, it's the third page here. So there is one letter from the League of California Cities to Governor Newsom urging support to establish California city revenue stabilization, share of allocation for cities with populations under 500,000 of the state's 8.54 billion CARES Act funding, and creation of a COVID-19 financing vehicle for cities to access to support immediate cash flow needs. Staff report.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, so I think this does not actually require any type of an action. This is more of an informational item for you under communications. I just wanted to bring forth this communication to the council and to the public to let them know that we are working with our partners to urge the governor for revenue backfill. In the letter, if you've had the chance to read it, it does state that right now California cities are looking at a revenue loss of about $7 billion. And the CARES Act, as we just spoke about in the budget discussion, did not allow for those cities or those jurisdictions, including counties, with populations less than 500,000 to receive a share of those monies. So this letter is really urging the governor to take a look at the revenue received from the CARES Act to the state and contemplate giving money to those jurisdictions with that population less than 500,000. We are also looking at trying to get the governor to create some sort of backfill revenue stabilization for cities, because we are looking at such a revenue decline, as we talked about once again in budget. Our budgets in the city perspective, it's a little bit different on the county end, but from a city perspective, our budgets are made up primarily of sales tax. And with the closure of businesses, this is really taking a hit for us as cities, which is going to have an impact to city services. So again, this letter is urging for the backfill of revenue, to create some sort of program to allow for that backfill, and to look at allowing cities to be able to receive a portion of that $8.4 billion share of the CARES Act funding that came down through the state. So once again, this is an informational item. I just wanted the council to be aware that the city of Sonora is taking proactive steps to urge statewide revenue backfill. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Okay, is there any questions for staff from the council? Okay, not seeing anybody. So I'm going to go ahead and open it for public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? Any public comment? Okay. Doug, seeing nobody?
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Then I'll close the public comment, bring it back to the council. Any last comment? Okay, seeing none, that's an informational item. And just want to thank staff for doing all of the work to get it to deal with all the paperwork and everything. Okay, item J is council member and department head reports. I think we'll start with our administrative services director, Mr. Gorski.
We don't have,
Nothing else tonight.
What's that? I'm sorry, Mary Rose.
sorry, nothing,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. All right, okay.
I have
Chris?
nothing else tonight.
Okay. Community development director, Ms. Kellogg.
I have nothing else tonight for you guys either.
Okay, thank you. Fire chief, Ms. Amy New.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the city administrator for recognizing today is International Firefighters Day.
That's
And
right.
thank all of my staff and our firefighters that are out there responding to the emergencies and part of the COVID response. So I want to thank my crews and all the firefighters out there. Thank you.
So Amy, is there any problem with getting staff PPEs, or everything's going okay?
Yeah, no, everything has been going really great. I've taken the lead for all of the county agencies to put in through the Mohawk for personal protective gear. We do a weekly shout out to the agencies and they give me the request needs. And it's definitely slowed down over the last couple of weeks. We haven't had to put in an additional request. So I think things are moving in a positive fashion moving forward with the pandemic.
Great. All right, thanks. Thank you, Amy. Police Chief, Mr. Vanderweel.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
And no problems with PPEs for you guys either?
Actually, the fire department has been taking care of us on that aspect. So thank
Great. Great. And come back to our esteemed attorney. Do you have a report?
Lots of things going on, but nothing more to talk about. So we'll just keep busy. So all COVID all the time. So.
Okay. And city administrator, Mary Rose, do you have anything?
Nothing to report. Just want to thank staff once again for all the help and support that they are doing in the midst of this pandemic. They've been great. So just want to report on that.
Great. Okay. So down to council members. Connie, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Colette?
Just lots of Zoom meetings, nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Plummer?
It's trivial, but Zoom meetings, while better than nothing, are still horrible compared to really seeing people and being with them. I would also like to thank staff and thank our community for their very measured response to the difficulties, and especially then the merchants and pretty much everybody. I think we have been spared a lot of troubles that other communities are suffering. And as such, we have had very few problems with the virus itself.
Great. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to say the same thing. I just want to thank city staff for the leadership through all of this. Chris, I think you said it the best. This has just really not only hurt a lot of people, but it's hurt city budgets along with lots of businesses. And I really appreciate the leadership from our staff here at the city. I've talked to several county supervisors, and they're feeling it too. And I really appreciate us working with the county and just the way things have gone. So a big thank you to everyone.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I have one thing I forgot to mention. In case you
Okay.
guys didn't know, Public Works has been out trying to get some work done while the traffic is still light throughout the city. So they did do a closure up on Lyons on the 30th. and they cleaned all the ditches, and they hauled out several dump truckloads full of debris. So I would like to thank them. They're thinking out of the box to make sure that things that can be done while the traffic's a little lighter get done. Some of the crosswalk work and all of that. So the guys have been out there working hard.
Great. I think that's wonderful. And as for me, Mark and Matt pretty much said it. Wanted to thank staff for the wonderful job that they're doing, trying to deal with this, trying to deal with all the ancillary stuff that comes along, stuff on Facebook that may or most likely may not be true, and having to deal with the fallout of that. It just, I can't say thank you enough to our staff. That's what they've had to deal with in this crisis situation. Just as for me, I just want to report that I've been attending, of course, a lot of Zoom meetings as well. We've had the 3 days a week meeting with the county, and just other meetings. So it's been an interesting process. And with that, seeing no further business, we're going to go ahead and just adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Hi,
Bye.
Dave.
Bye, Dave.
I know Dave's popped up on my screen here.